कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद् अभयचरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शिल प्रभुपाद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की युगधर्म श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की। हरे कृष्ण। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। So we are reading today from Canto 6, Chapter 9, the chapter entitled The Appearance of the Demon Vritrasura. Text 43, so it is Gadya. So I'll only just recite. Ata eva swayam tadu kalpayasmakam bhagavataha paramagurostava charana shatapalashachayam vividha vrujina sansara parishramopa shani mupasrutanam vayam yat kamenopasaditaha. So word to word meaning. Ata eva, therefore, swayam, yourself, tat, that, upakalpaya, please arrange, asmakam, of us, bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, paramaguroho, the Supreme Spiritual Master, tava, of you, charana, of the feet, shatapalashat, like lotus flowers with hundreds of petals, chayam, the shade, vividha, various, vrujina, with dangerous positions, samsara, of this conditioned life, parishrama, the pain, upashamanim, relieving, upasrishtanam, the devotees who take shelter at your lotus feet, vayam, we, yat, for which, kamena, by the desires, upasaditaha, caused to come near, the shelter of your lotus feet. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Dear Lord, you are omniscient, and therefore you know very well why we have taken shelter at your lotus feet, which provide shade that gives relief from all material disturbances. Since you are the Supreme Spiritual Master and you know everything, we have sought shelter of your lotus feet for instruction. Please give us relief by counteracting our present distress. Your lotus feet are the only shelter for a fully surrendered devotee and are the only means for subduing all the tribulations of this material world. Purport. One need only seek shelter of the shade of the Lord's lotus feet. Then all the material tribulations that disturb him will be subdued. Just as when one comes under a shadow of a big tree, the disturbances caused by the heat of the scorching sun are immediately mitigated without one asking for relief. Therefore, the whole concern of the conditioned soul should be the lotus feet of the Lord. The conditioned soul, suffering from various tribulations because of existing in this material world, can be relieved only when he seeks shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Ati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guruho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्प तरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So first of all, I would like to seek the blessings of all Vaishnavas present here, because I am not qualified to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, but just for my own purification, I will try to discuss something. So I need blessings of all the devotees who are present. So in this particular chapter, we see how Krutrasur has appeared from the sacrifice performed by Tvashta, and he is creating great havoc in the lives of demigods. They are highly disturbed. उनका demigods का कुछ चल नहीं रहा है वृत्रासुर के सामने. He swallowed their weapons, very easily, and in this way demigods are in greatly distressed situation. And that's how demigods, they go to Lord Vishnu, they pray for Lord Vishnu, and then Lord Vishnu appears to them with 16 attendants who look exactly like him. And again demigods start offering prayers. So this section from 31st verse onwards, the second term of the prayers of demigods are there. So just 2-3 verses back, we saw how demigods, they are requesting Lord that previously you have saved us by taking so many incarnations. We were in similar distressful situations. Demons were disturbing us and you had taken so many incarnations. So now please, this time again take some incarnation and please relieve us from the distress. And the last verse, the demigods are saying that, Lord, we are praying to you, but as such you are omniscient. You know everything. So in this way, somewhat demigods are feeling little ashamed also. So they are apologizing. In the 42nd verse, the demigods, they are apologizing from the Lord that you know everything, but still we are coming and informing you of our present situation. So in this way, they want to apologize. They are feeling little ashamed. So in this verse, the similar theme is being continued, wherein the demigods are saying that you are omniscient, so you know very well why we are praying to you, why we have taken shelter of your lotus feet. So now please, be merciful upon us and relieve us from our present distress. So His Holiness Bhakti Ashraya Vaishnava Swami Maharaj, he was telling that these demigods, they took shelter of the Lord in extreme fear. And when the Lord appeared, they felt great relief and great hope that now some solution is surely going to come. And in this way, they became very excited. And in their excited situation, they forgot all meters, all different ways of, praying and all that. And that's why they are praying sometimes in prose, sometimes in poetry. So they began with poetry. Now they are praying in prose. Again, they will continue with poetry. So in this way, in their excited situation, they forgot all other things, So Uh, these are the two primary necessities of every soul, every jiva. One is pleasure, another is shelter. These are the primary necessities of every jiva. And without shelter, the pleasure is not very sustainable. So one says the shelter is the basis of even pleasure. Even if one gets some pleasure without shelter, it is like some water droplets on the lotus leaf, which does not sustain for a long time. So in this way, we can say that the shelter is the most important necessity of a jiva. So there are two types of shelter every conditioned soul wants. One is physical shelter and another is emotional shelter. So physical shelter is meant for sustenance of the body and also for sense gratification. And emotional shelter is found in terms of relationship, society, friendship, love, and so many egoistic pursuits as well, in terms of profit, adoration, distinction. So these are all emotional shelters person is seeking for. So if we see in the world, every person is trying to take shelter into these two platforms. Ultimately, both are material platforms, either through physical shelter. So people want to have, big homes and bank balance and various types of relationships in terms of material shelter. And this whole social media is going on with this, isn't it? So everybody is hankering to take these two shelters. But then our Revered Acharya Govinda Kaviraj, he tells that how these shelters are also like the drops of water on the lotus leaf, isn't it? Edhana yauvana putra parijana iteke ache parati tire kamala dala jala jivana talamala bhajahu haripada nitire. So he's telling that how, even though we may take shelter of this body and youth, it appears that this youth we are so strong, can do anything we like. Or somebody who has wealth, he also feels like that with wealth I can purchase anything. If I have money, I have everything of this world. I don't have to care for any troubles. So in this way, a person may think like that, but these all shelters are so temporary. They are there today, they will not last, forever. For some time, though, here in our temple also we have lotus, right, in the pond. So we can do that experiment. We can try to put some water. It just spills over. It doesn't remain forever on that leaf, isn't it? So same way, same is the nature of all the things in this world. How long the youth will remain? How long our body will remain? Isn't it? How long the home and other things of this world remain? Everything will be dispersed in the passage of time. So that's why these are all not the permanent shelter. So demigods, they are looking for shelter also, but they are understanding that the real shelter is in the Lord. Why? Because the nature of this world is Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravartino Arjuna Mam Upetyatu Kaunte Punarjanmana Vidyate. They understand this fact that we may try to take shelter anywhere in this world, but the nature of this world is Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. Everything in this world is going to change, everything in this world is going to be destroyed. So, and it is full of miseries. Today, one situation may come and it may get solved. One tribulation may come, it may get solved. But tomorrow another will come. And in this way, as long as one is in this world, there has to be tribulations. One cannot get rid of tribulations. Just like, if one is in the ocean, one cannot sail very smoothly in the ocean, because ocean is filled with waves, and as long as one is in the ocean, there are always going to be waves. And in this way, this is the nature of this world also. As long as one stays, even if one goes to higher planets, generally Vedic followers, Karma Kandiya followers, they aspire to go to heavenly planets. But there is no peace and permanent shelter even over there. Demigods themselves, whom people worship, they themselves are sometimes driven out of their own positions, their own houses, their own shelters, isn't it? They themselves become shelterless sometimes. So this is the nature of this world, that even if one goes to that place or wherever one goes, even if one becomes Brahma also, at the end of, when the Mahavishnu breathes in, even Brahma's life is finished and the Brahma Loka is also finished. So demigods, they understand this fact, and that's why they are taking shelter of Supreme Lord. So that's how demigods are considered to be very pious, Sukrutina. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvidha bhajante mam, jana Sukrutina Arjuna, artho jnyasu artharthi, jnani cha bharatarshabha. So 4 types of people, who are pious, they take shelter of the Supreme Lord. So demigods are in great distress, and that's why they want to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. They are so pious, they are devotees of the Lord. This is a typical characteristic of demigods, that whenever they are in difficulty, they always run for Lord's shelter. So this is a good point about them. This is their credit. They are Sukrutina. On the other hand, we see that those who are Dushkritina, they never take shelter of the Lord. Those who are miscreants, they never take shelter of the Lord. They will try to take shelter of different things. When person is in tribulation, a Dushkritina person, he will try to take shelter of some kind of political maneuvering, or some kind of intoxication also, isn't it? Some people, this is a typical scenario in the colleges or companies, that whenever people go into distress, they take shelter of intoxication. Jai Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Bhagwan ki jai, Jai Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Shri Gaur Nitai Bhagwan ki jai. So this is a typical scenario, that people take intoxication just to forget that stress, just to forget that trouble. But then again, these intoxications, what type of shelter they can offer? It seems that one is forgotten things for some time. It seems that person has come out of distress for some time, but the reality again comes, it becomes very evident as soon as that intoxication is over. So this is how the miscreants, they don't take shelter of the Lord. They may take shelter of different things. Sometimes they take shelter of violence, and they try to harm others in order to overcome their tribulations. But the nature of devotees is that they always want to take shelter of the Lord. They always want mercy of the Lord. So here we see this is what demigods are doing. They are coming to Lord in terms of difficulties. So the one way, actually, the person's shelter is understood, what shelter person is situated in is understood when the tribulation comes in his life. When a person is put in the situation of tribulation, then where he goes for a shelter, that's what indicates that what he is taking shelter of in general. Because this is one of the ways, because tribulations are really shake a person. And then, it indicates that where he goes, what he does, that shows where he is situated at, where he is sheltered at. So here we see that demigods, they are devotees of the Lord, although they may not be pure devotees of the Lord, but they are devotees of the Lord. So whenever there is a distress, they are going to the Lord for the shelter. And we saw in the seventh chapter of this very canto, that Lord Indra, he is himself telling, this particular shloka. So he is telling that anyone who looks at, this is the 14th verse, of the same, 6 and 14 maybe. open the verse also over here. Yeah. So he's telling, Tesham kupatha deshtrinyam patatam tamasihi adha ye shraddhayur vachaste vai majjanti ashma plavaiva. Leaders who have fallen into ignorance and who mislead people by directing them to the path of destruction, as described in previous verse, are in effect boarding a stone boat, and so too are those who blindly follow them. A stone boat would be unable to float and would sink in the water with its passengers. Similarly, those who mislead people go to hell and the followers go with them. So here Indra, in fact this is the inception of this entire pastime, right? Indra is he offends Brihaspati, and he himself is saying this, that those people who take shelter of anybody except for the Supreme Lord, it is like taking shelter of a stone boat. So how much ever the stone boat may be strong and very beautiful looking, but the destination of stone boat in the waters is drowning. Sure shot it is going to drown. So Prabhupada, very nicely speaks in the purport, the second paragraph. One who boards a boat made up of stone is doomed. To be elevated to the stage of perfection, humanity must give up the false leader who present boats of stone. All human society is in such a dangerous position that to be rescued it must abide by the standard instructions of the Vedas. So Prabhupada is saying that if one takes shelter of something else, false leaders, surely they are going to be doomed. So what is the shelter? The instructions given in the Vedas. The cream of this instruction appear in form of Bhagavad Gita. So one should not take shelter of any other instructions, for Bhagavad Gita gives direct instruction on how to fulfill the aim of human life. Therefore Lord Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Give up all the process of religion and simply surrender into me. Prabhupada says, even if one does not accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if somebody feels that somebody doesn't believe that Krishna is God, still Prabhupada says that his instructions are so exalted and beneficial for humanity that if one follows his instructions, one will be saved. So even if one does not believe on Krishna, but nonetheless follows his instructions, he will be saved. Otherwise means if one is not taking shelter of Krishna, one will be cheated by unauthorized meditation and gymnastic methods of yoga. Thus one will board a boat of stone which will sink and drown all its passengers. Unfortunately, although American people are extremely eager to get out of materialistic chaos, they are sometimes found to patronize makers of stone boats. They patronize the makers of stone boats. Means basically those who give false shelters. So Prabhupada says such people, those who give false shelters, are patronized. Generally, people in America, they feel that whatever comes from India is all good only. It all must be very spiritual. So sometimes in such a whatever ignorance or innocence, what happens? That they happen to patronize such false leaders. So that will not help them. They must take proper boat offered by Krishna in the form of Krishna consciousness movement. Then they will be easily saved. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Ashmamayaha plavo yesham te yatha majjantam plavan anumajjanti tatheti rajaniti upadeshtru swa sabheshu kopo vyanjitaha. If society is guided by political diplomacy with one nation maneuvering against another, it will certainly sink like a stone boat. Political maneuvering and diplomacy will not save human society. People must take to Krishna consciousness to understand the aim of life, to understand God and to fulfill the human mission. So how vividly Prabhupada has described the false shelters, how they will not be able to save a person. In fact, a person will be doomed. And what happens when a person takes such false shelters, then as he gets troubled, what happens is that he loses his faith in the Lord. And he feels that why why Lord is doing like this with me. And the result of losing faith in the Lord is, again he takes shelter of stone boats. Again he takes shelter of another stone boat, another kind of stone boat, another type of false shelters. And again he loses the faith because he will not be able to come out of the tribulations of this world. And again he will lose faith further on the Lord. And in this way this cycle continues and continues and continues on till the time person comes to this realization that there is no other shelter than the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord's lotus feet are the only shelter for me. So that's how, to a degree, person is convinced of this fact. To that degree, he will be feeling such a great shelter within the Lord that he will not be disturbed by any tribulations within this world. But to the degree person is not convinced of this fact, to that degree he will need all other shelters. He will need all other things. He will depend on other things. So, here demigods, now they have become sober. And they are understanding the reality. So it is only the soberity which it takes to understand the reality. They have to believe that the Lord is the only shelter. And there is no other shelter except for the Lord. So here Prabhupada in the purport is giving, he is telling about how when a person comes under the shade of tree, all the troubles and all the difficulties which he has faced because of scorching sun, the heat which has caused it, what happens? He immediately becomes relieved. He doesn't have to even ask, oh tree, please give me relief. He has to just come under the shade of the tree and all his troubles will go away. All his tribulations will go away. So, the only problem is what? The only problem is that unless and until there is a scorching heat, there is no tendency to take shelter of tree. When there is a nice rainy season, isn't it? How nice, we feel, we may pass through so many trees, so many nice big trees, and one may think, oh, so nice trees. But one will not be interested to take the shelter because one feels no need. But when there is a scorching heat, when there is a, sun is scorching our body, then one takes shelter of the tree. So same way, oftentimes, unless until tribulations come in the life of a person, he doesn't take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. He wants to act independently. He wants to do something on his own. So as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Bado dukha paiyachi swatantra jivane dukha dure gelo padavarane. So he says, I have been living an independent life independent from the Lord, and as a result, what is the result? I faced so many difficulties in my life. I found so many troubles, tribulations. Bado dukha paiyachi. But as soon as I have come, taken under the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, all the tribulations are gone. So, as Narottam Das Thakur also says, Nitai padakamala koti chandra sushitala. The lotus feet of Nityanand Prabhu, they are like cooling shelter of hundreds and thousands. Koti means millions of moons. So where take shelter of Lord Nityanand Prabhu's lotus feet, he will find his life he is relieved from all the tribulations and his life is filled with bliss. So we know this pastime comes in the case of Nityanand Prabhu's, that Nityanand Prabhu was ordered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go and preach in Bengal. And he was accompanied by all his illustrious associates. So when he comes to Navadvip, he was staying at the house of Hiranya Pandit and Jagdish Pandit, at whose house Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his childhood had done pastime of Ekadashi Prasadam, that pastime. So Nityanand Prabhu was staying over there. So that time, Nityanand Prabhu was always decorated with lot of gems and ornaments, very valuable ornaments. So At that time some dacoits who were there around, they saw Nityananda Prabhu, and they saw, and there's an entire party of Nityananda Prabhu was also similarly very gorgeously dressed. So they are all feeling, though it's so nice that we can loot these people, and then what will happen? We will become so rich that we don't have to do any robbery for the entirety of our life. We can simply relax and enjoy. And in this way, they made a very good strategic planning how to rob Nityananda Prabhu. But so they are waiting for the night. And the night came, the devotees of Nityananda Prabhu, they were honoring prasadam, their dinner prasadam. And they kept on honoring so much, they are not stopping only. And these thieves were waiting, these robbers were waiting, Hare, when these people are going to stop? So they were continuously taking prasadam because they are tasting Krishna in the form of prasadam. So they are unlimitedly taking prasadam because they are able to experience Krishna through this prasadam. And finally, by Nityananda Prabhu's arrangement, one of his servants named Nidra Devi. She did not affect them because the dacoits were waiting for them to sleep, but she affected the dacoits only. And all the dacoits fell asleep, only to get up with the crowing of roosters in the morning. And then they saw, hey, what is this? Morning has come. And they started fighting. You slept first. And then another said, you slept first. Because of you, we have lost the chance. And in this way, they are fighting. And the leader of that dacoit, he said, no, don't fight like this. I know the reason, why we were not successful. Because we did not worship Chandi very properly, So we have to worship goddess Chandi before doing any auspicious act. So then next, they arranged for one saptaha of Chandi worship. And they perform elaborate worship of Durga Devi. And at the end, then they decided, now we are going to rob. And in the night again they waited. So they saw the assistants of this leader, they saw that Nityananda Prabhu, where he was, big, huge guards, they were patrolling around, and they were so huge in size, they appeared as if not of this world. They were as if coming from some other world, and they were guarding Nityananda Prabhu and his entire entourage. And they all were waiting that maybe these guards will also sleep, but they were not sleeping at all. Continuously they are patrolling, and they were continuously chanting, Krishna, 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 Krishna. And then they came back and they said, these guards are so huge that we cannot face them. We will be defeated thoroughly. So leader said, okay, well, let us wait for some more days, and these guards will get bored and go away. But then, none of these things happened. And when again these robbers, they were planning to attack Nityananda Prabhu, that time suddenly all these robbers, they became blinded, and they fell into the ditch, which was full of thorns, which was full of leeches who were sucking their blood. And Indradev, whom we are discussing, one of the personalities who offered prayers to the Lord, he could not tolerate, how can these people, they can do any harm to my Lord Nityananda Prabhu? It is not possible. And in this way, he started showering torrential rains. So it added to their misery. Already they are so miserable, being torn apart by the thorns and being sucked, their blood was being sucked by the leeches. It was such a terrible situation. They are blind, they are not able to see what is around, entirety of darkness, top of that the rains. And in this way they were suffering so much. So somehow, by the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu, the realization dawned in the heart of this leader of the dacoits. And he understood that actually this Nityananda Prabhu, he must not be an ordinary man. He must not be an ordinary human being. He must be Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And he understood how foolish I was, that I had trying to rob him. I was trying to trouble him. So in this way, he came to the realization. And as soon as he came to the realization, the rain stopped, and he could come out of that pit. And all the troubles he was undergoing, So they went away, and then he came in front of Nityananda Prabhu, and he took shelter of Lord Nityananda Prabhu's lotus feet. And Nityananda Prabhu, of course, he got his eyes back also, and he begged forgiveness from Nityananda Prabhu. So he was telling Nityananda Prabhu that, oh Lord, I want to drown myself into Ganga because of such a sinful thought I had to trouble you and to, loot you. So I just want to drown myself in Ganga river and give up my life. But Nityananda Prabhu told that is not required. Now you just give up all your sinful habits, give up all your sinful activities, and just take to Krishna consciousness, just take to the chanting of holy names. And I have relieved you of all your sinful reactions of the past. So you will not suffer any troubles, You are relieved from all your past sinful karmic reactions. And in this way, you just take shelter of the holy names and also preach. So many dacoits you are knowing, right? Aapka bahut acha pehchan hai, So, and he was quite really a good dacoit, like kind of a dominating dacoit amongst all. So they all already do salute to you. They already come, and take your shelter. So now when they will come and take your shelter, what you do? You preach to them and give them the shelter of Krishna. You give them the shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in this way, you can start dacoit preaching mission like that. So this we can see from this past time how when this dacoit, they took shelter of course all his associates immediately became devotees also. So when all of them, they took shelter of Nityananda Prabhu's lotus feet, what happened that all their tribulations went away and their heart was transformed. Not only that temporary situation was elevated, because their sinful reactions were also eradicated, so they were saved from the further tribulations of their life as well. And they became associates of Nityananda Prabhu. But the only point is that it took that great amount of torture and tribulation in their life in order to take shelter of Nityananda Prabhu. They were not taking before that. So, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was telling in the class on this verse that the intelligent person is what? He understands simply by hearing. He doesn't have to undergo tribulations in order to take shelter of the Lord. He simply understands by hearing and he takes shelter of the Lord. He is convinced of that. So, Maharaj was telling that that's why it is very much important that we should learn by hearing and we should read Srimad Bhagavatam every day. Then we'll remain alert and cautious. So, one of the way to take shelter of the Lord is to take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because if we take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, our intelligence will be nourished. Intelligence will be in the right situation. And then when the tribulations do come in our life, we'll know where to go for shelter. We'll know what to do. We'll not be bewildered. So that's what it is important that, one has to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day. So, Maharaj is also telling, what do you mean by taking shelter? Taking shelter means what? Generally when we are not having any other protection, when we understand that we cannot protect ourselves, then we take shelter. So, just like when Srila Prabhupada was there in Kolkata, that time, whatever Japanese or German, they are bombing Kolkata during World War. So many people in the Kolkata, they were dismissed here and there. And what they are doing? They are taking shelter of bomb shelters, right? You know that there are bunkers, which are made sometimes underground. And they're all going and taking shelter over there. So that time there was no distinction between, who is rich and who is poor. Everybody had to take shelter alike. And none of their material qualifications were coming to their aid. Even if somebody was very expert in karate, he cannot kick the bomb away, right? Even if somebody is a very great scholar, he cannot argue with the bomb. Hey, don't blast here. Go and blast over there. He cannot do that. If somebody is very rich man, he cannot bribe the bomb. Hey, thoda dur raho. Itna paisa le lo karke. No. everybody understands that we cannot do, we cannot do anything. We have to simply depend on these bomb shelters. So when a person, he comes into such helpless situation, then one takes a shelter. But at the same time, a devotee understands that we are always in helpless situation, because we have come into this material world which is full of tribulations, so we are always in a helpless situation. So the tendency of a devotee is that he always takes shelter of the Lord. And Maharaj says that that is what is spiritual world. Spiritual world, people are always taking shelter. And when they take shelter, because they are always taking shelter of the Lord, there are no tribulations for them. They are always very blissful. So, it is only the matter of fact, with a soberty, that one has to understand that I need this shelter. Without the shelter of the Lord, how much ever material adjustments I may make, of course one may have to do needful, but in general, what is my shelter? These material adjustments cannot give me real shelter. I must take shelter of the Supreme Lord only to be relieved and to also, become happy in my life. So when a devotee in this way learns to exclusively take shelter of Krishna, then that quality of taking shelter, that wins the heart of Krishna. As long as one thinks very high of himself and thinks that he can save himself, he can get whatever he likes, he can do whatever he likes, one will not be able to take shelter. But when one develops that humility, so humility is also one of the prerequisite for taking shelter. Through humility, one understands I am so insignificant. These tribulations of this material world can overwhelm me at any point of time. So, and I cannot overcome them on my own. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. This unsurmountable material energy is, with any amounts of efforts, on a material scale, one cannot surmount this material energy. So, Mameva ye prapadyante maya metam taranti te. So if one takes shelter of Krishna with utter humility, that Krishna, I am yours. I cannot save myself. I am simply dependent on you. Then Krishna will surely be pleased to give us the shelter. And then one will be in a very, very safe position in one's life. So this is another prerequisite, that one has to become humble. Then Krishna gives us shelter also. So we see how Prahlad Maharaj, he was always dependent on Krishna for the shelter. He was put into so much tribulations, but it's a very classic example. He never asked also. Here demigods are asking for the shelter, but Prahlad Maharaj never said to Narsimha Dev that, Lord, please save me. He knew that whatever Narsimha Dev feels best for me, whatever Krishna feels best for me, that will happen. And in this way, Prahlad Maharaj was always dependent on Krishna. He was always taking shelter of Krishna. And in this way, he was protected from all the tribulations of his life. Similarly, we see Draupadi, she called out for Krishna in her extreme situation. Actually, in general, Pandavas are the best example of this principle also. How they are, always taking shelter of Krishna. And so many varieties of situations happen in their life, but they never gave up shelter of Krishna. Vipra Dharma Achyuta Shrayaha. They are always sheltered in the Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, in the religion, and unto Krishna. And in this way, they are always protected by the Supreme Lord. They were always happy in whatever state they are. And that's how from Pandavas one can learn that devotee welcomes any situation in his life. Because the supremely auspicious situation in the life of a devotee is when he can take shelter of the Lord. So, whether it may be happy situation or whether it may be distressful situation. In fact, Kunti Maharani, very paradoxical. Kunti Maharani is praying that let the calamities come. Here demigods are praying, let the calamities go away. But Kunti Maharani is praying, let the calamities come. Because she is interested that because whenever calamities come, Krishna, you come. So these calamities are auspicious for us. So you come and you give us protection. You are always with us. So better these calamities are for us. So whether it may be calamities or happiness, devotee welcomes every situation. Whatever comes from Krishna, he always accepts that. and he wants to take shelter of Krishna in every situation. So, also these pastimes can tell us that how Krishna can do anything. When a devotee takes shelter of Krishna, Krishna can do anything for the devotee's protection. Krishna has given promise, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. He tells Arjuna, you please declare boldly that my devotee will never perish. So, he has given promise that he will protect devotees, and that's how when we put that faith on Krishna, that avashya rakshive Krishna iti vishwasa palan, this is one of the symptoms of surrender. So these two things, are very much in relation with this topic. Go truptre varanam tatha and avashya rakshive Krishna iti iti vishwasa palan. So devotee feels always himself very much dependent on the Lord for all his maintenance and everything, and he has a full faith that Krishna will surely protect me. So Krishna can come in any form. He came to Draupadi in the form of Sari. He came to Prahlad Maharaj in the form of Narsimhadev, half lion, half man incarnation. So he can come in any form to show his mercy, and in this way he will, it is guaranteed that he will protect the devotee in all the circumstances. So that is Krishna's word. And supreme shelter which Krishna gives, especially in this Kali Yuga, is of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, what are the different ways? What do you mean by devotee taking shelter? What are the different ways in which one can take shelter? So, of course, there can be innumerable ways. One of the ways to chant, one of the most prominent ways to chant the holy names of the Lord. So this is, devotee knows that in any type of situation, my only shelter is these holy names, this bead bag, So that's why devotees like to carry bead bag always, Wherever there is a opportunity and time, let us chant, because holy names are such a shelter for a devotee. Similarly, another way of taking shelter of the Lord, because sometimes we want to know what is the way to take shelter of the Lord. What do you mean by taking shelter of the Lord? Another way of taking shelter is offering fervent prayers. So many of our acharyas, they have written so many beautiful prayers, So we can recite those prayers, and these prayers are so much wonderful. They can give us that inspiration to take shelter of the Lord. So we can recite those prayers, we can pray to the Lord. Also, taking shelter of the Lord means taking shelter of the Lord's instructions, which are given in Bhagavad Gita. So when Arjun, he was in greatly distressed situation 2 times. When at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was in a greatly distressed situation. The instructions which Krishna gave to him on Bhagavad Gita saved him. Another time when Krishna disappeared from this world, that time also Arjuna was in in the ocean of grief. But he took shelter of the instructions of Krishna, and he could feel the presence of Krishna. And in this way he felt, great relief from that distress of separation from Krishna. So taking shelter of Krishna means taking shelter of instructions of Krishna, which are there in Bhagavad Gita. Taking shelter of Krishna Katha in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the Srimad Bhagavatam is such a wonderful guideline for all the devotees, that it is the experience of so many devotees that when they are in a very great confusion or any type of difficulty, if they just open Bhagavatam, it gives the answer. It addresses their problem, and they become very happy. They get the solution for all their difficulties. So that's how taking shelter of Krishna means also taking shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, wherein one can get right instructions to overcome our difficult situations. Also, taking shelter of Krishna can mean taking shelter of devotees of Krishna, because devotees of Krishna are the one who can tell us what Krishna wants from us and how to surrender to Krishna in this particular situation, what exactly one should do. So that is taking guidance from the devotees. So taking shelter of Krishna means also taking shelter of devotees. So when we say that we take shelter of lotus feet of Krishna, but who is situated at the lotus feet of Krishna? Devotees are situated at the lotus feet of Krishna. So taking shelter of Krishna means also taking shelter of his pure devotees. And by their mercy also, one can overcome all the difficulties in one's life and one can get permanent shelter of Krishna. So these are few of the ways I could think of, that taking shelter of Krishna, but many, many more ways must be there. So to conclude with, this verse comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto. Dhautatma Purusha Krishna Padamulam na munchati Mukta Sarva Parikleshaha Panthasva Sharanam Yatha. What is the quality of devotee? Dhautatma. He is completely cleansed of all material contamination. Padamulam na munchati. He never gives up the lotus feet of Krishna. He always holds on very tightly to lotus feet of Krishna. And in this way, he feels mukta sarva parikleshaha. He feels completely relieved of all the kleshas. How? Pantha swa sharanam yatha. Just like a person who is in the troublesome journey, when he comes home, how relieved, how blissful he feels. Similarly, a devotee, he is, when he understands that I am being battered by all the tribulations of this world, but when he takes shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, he feels very much relieved and sheltered and refused. So this is what is the quality of devotee. So, of course, it is very easy to speak big, big things, but it is a challenge to follow in one's life. So I seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas that I also will give up the false shelters of this world and take shelter of Krishna in my own life. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Hare Krishna. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
जय श्री श्री चौराग्रगण्यष्टकम की जय। व्रजे प्रसिद्धं नवनीतचौरं गोप